Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Football House. Sam Basil, joined alongside Cole Hughes, where we're breaking down Week 7. Locks, upsets, game of the week, everything here for you, leading up to what is now going to be the week where we get over the hump in the 2023 college football season. So, Cole, we're about to be over the halfway point in the regular season. Things are starting to heat up. Bowl talk is coming. Conference championship talk is coming, and we're about 3 weeks away from the first college football playoff rankings. Which obviously, there's a long way to go from the first rankings all the way to near the New Year's Six games. But I feel like those rankings always serve as a very important benchmark for how the second half of the college football season always goes. So, what are your thoughts? Just quick thoughts heading into Week 7.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I haven't been on the show for a couple of weeks. Missed you guys. So definitely good to be back. Like you said, we're in the thick of it right now, which is awesome. We're getting into October, November, best part of the college football season, which is always good. It's been a crazy year, especially last week. If you look at, some of the games that we had, a lot of great games last week. Rivalry games, top 25 games, Red River rivalry last week. Great showdown between Oklahoma and Texas. That was a wild game. Oklahoma pulling that off was huge for them. I think it showed a lot about that team and who they are this year under Brent Venables. Some other games, Alabama and A&M, another close game for Bama. They're staying alive for now, but who knows what's going to happen down the road in the SEC. Other good games, the Miami Georgia Tech game that ended crazy. Miami kind of shot themselves in the foot, which could end up hurting them down the road. Out in the Pac-12, you had UCLA, Washington State, UCLA getting that upset win, which was surprising for them, but good for them. So a lot of good games. We're getting into the thick of it, and, it's make or break time for a lot of these teams now. A lot of teams have impressed so far, but, let's see where they end up coming into November, December bowl season.
Yeah, a lot of chaos as we welcome Gilly to the stage. Gilly, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good, pretty good. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late here, guys, but no, I'm doing pretty solid. How's everything going with you guys?
Great.
Going good. We're just getting right into the thick of it, which is actually what we're also doing in the college football season. So, as Cole just kind of outlined, just talking about a lot of the main moments from Week 6, right? We had Louisville taking down Notre Dame, Oklahoma in the stunning win over Texas, Miami not figuring out what was going on against Georgia Tech. And out of a lot of that chaos, there emerged 6 key teams. Well, actually, and a little bit in Week 7 as well. But what I want to focus on right here is, out of the chaos that was Week 6 and the beginning of Week 7, we've got 6 teams that hit a really important milestone in any college football regular season, and that is bowl eligibility. And I know that Will Tondo is usually our, house enterprise one-man graphics department. He does a fantastic job. But I figured, I'd use some of my, basic graphic design skills and illustrate a graphic that we're going to have going for the rest of the season as every team gets their 6th regular season win. And so that's just congratulating some of the bowl eligible teams that we've got. So, guys, I want to let you know, for my first time doing a graphic, I'm pretty impressed with myself. So
there we go.
Featuring, some classic Microsoft Word art, I would like to congratulate, the 6 first bowl eligible teams of 2023. Michigan, Louisville, USC, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Liberty. So looking at this graphic, I think one thing I kind of wanted to break down is I'm kind of conflating, just being bowl eligible as kind of an equal achievement for all 6 of these teams, right? But when you look at this group, obviously the range of what they will call a successful season from the top team to the bottom team is very wide. So looking at this, specifically with teams like Louisville, Oklahoma, and Liberty, where do they go from here, and how can they continue to kind of defy expectations right now?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head by splitting those three teams up, right? You have Michigan, USC, and Georgia, who expected to be here at this point in the season, right? Those are all three teams that could end up in the college football playoff, right? So they should have 6 wins at this point. But, when you look at Louisville, Oklahoma, and Liberty, that's a little different, right? And, coming in when we started the show, I said there's been multiple teams that have impressed this year, and Louisville's one of them, man. I mean, who would have thought that Louisville would be at the top of the ACC at this point in the season? I wouldn't have. They're having a great year. Obviously, they had a huge win last week at home against Notre Dame. But as for, where they stand and what their hopes are going forward, I mean, I think Louisville and Oklahoma, I think right now a realistic expectation for them is to be competing for their conference championships respectively, right? You have Oklahoma in the Big 12, their final year, Louisville in the ACC. These teams right now at this point have shown that they can compete for these conferences. And I think that should be their goal. And then, hopefully get into a New Year's Six bowl game. Oklahoma could even go further. I mean, if they run the table, they could sneak into the college football playoff based on what happens with the top 4 teams right now. So I think their ceilings are pretty high. Liberty, I mean, they're crushing it. I don't think they expected to be where they were, especially after losing Hugh Freeze to Auburn. I mean, they've been successful the last couple of years, but some switch ups in their programs has happened, but they're chugging right along. So I like where these teams are at, but that's where I would put them right now.
Along those lines, I was just trying to kind of feed off of that with Louisville in particular, because Liberty's schedule is kind of weird, right? I think Western Kentucky is their final test game, if you will, for the rest of the season, just because Conference USA is not one of these big conferences, obviously. But with Louisville, I was just trying to map out what that future looks like in terms of the next few weeks.
Intense.
It is. So next week they have Duke, that is at home, and then they've got Virginia Tech, Virginia, and then they finish out the season the last 2 weeks at Miami and then Kentucky. And then all of a sudden, though, I'm just doing some math here and figuring out there's a chance that Louisville, Florida State, and North Carolina could all go undefeated. What would happen for the ACC championship if that were the case? Because I was just trying to figure out oh wait, is it a lock that they play Florida State or is North Carolina in the mix? But neither of those teams play each other in the regular season.
Yeah, I would assume it would go to. Well, usually when it comes to I'm just going off of college basketball standings, how those tiebreakers work out, and it usually comes down to best win over a common opponent.
Okay.
Yeah, but okay. I don't know. It's tough.
Okay, interesting. No, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to. You know what? Duke might be that opponent because I think they all play Duke. But yeah, no. I mean, there's an outside shot though. If Louisville runs the table, that they could be ready for a couple of one-loss teams in that top 10 and maybe slide into the conversation for a college football spot if they run the table. Which again, that says a lot because eventually they'll have to beat a Florida State or North Carolina.
Yeah, and just quickly looking, I just pulled it up. So this is from 2021. I don't know if anything's changed in the ACC, but as of 2021, tiebreaker policy is head-to-head competition between the two tied teams. Then it goes to win percentage of the tied teams within the division, and then head-to-head competition versus the team within the division with the best overall win percentage. So, I mean, it keeps going down. It could get into the nitty-gritty, but there are tiebreaker policies for the ACC if that were to happen. So that'll be interesting down the road to see if that actually plays out and all three of those teams are fighting for 2 spots in the ACC championship.
Yeah, it's important to note on that tie-breaking policy that since then, the biggest change with the ACC is they have eliminated divisions within the conference. But I bet that anywhere that you said division in those 3 policies, you could probably just substitute conference.
Right.
You know what I mean? How far down until they get into like alphabetical order? I know that's kind of the way that some soccer teams kind of break it down.
I'm looking at 5 bullet points here, and I'm not seeing anything about alphabetical. So it's got to get down there.
All right, maybe it'll get into a coin toss like that FCS playoff spot a couple years ago.
Distance to the equator, whether it's from other ways to.
It's funny though, because all of them really are tied into win percentage, whether it's in your conference or outside of your conference or whatever. So if they're all undefeated, I mean, their win percentage is the same, right? They're at 1,000. So it might come down to alphabetical or coin toss or something like that.
Wow, I mean, as someone who just loves like just college athletic chaos, like I think that'd be very fun. In terms of Liberty, I know that they're still a ways away from even attaining a New Year's Six bowl with with an undefeated record, but I think one way that they could kind of come out on top is if they win Conference USA, which I've been watching a lot of. I don't know if you guys have been watching a lot of, but they play in these Tuesday, Wednesday night games now. Because we're in that pocket of 50 consecutive nights with at least a college or NFL football game. So if they win Conference USA, there are at least 3 bowls that are specifically affiliated to Conference USA, and that's the Bahamas Bowl, the New Orleans Bowl, and the Hawaii Bowl. That spot either goes to an American team or a Conference USA team versus a Mountain West team. So if they run the table, I mean, they could be, I think their best bet is just having a fun bowl game that they can win in, just a nice climate to play in.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not bad. Whether you're playing in the Bahamas, Hawaii, or that's a win-win-win right there.
Yeah, it's like you're playing for a vacation essentially. Let's take a look at our latest Football House rankings as we kind of go through, what this means for some of these teams. Obviously, notably, Liberty has not cracked our Football House top 25, although I'm sure more of us will be keeping an eye on them as the season progresses. Louisville moving all the way up to 16, ahead of Notre Dame, who's now 18th after that win. Oklahoma also rising, Alabama on their way back up, and Texas taking a big dive all the way down to 11th. Another notable change is USC falling out of our projected playoff spot all the way down to 6th. In the AP poll, they're all the way down to 10th. Obviously, they got the win, but, it took a long time over Arizona in, a couple overtimes. So what does that win say about USC? Can that kind of be attributed to this lopsided, how much better their offense is over their defense this year, or are there other factors at play?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they're not getting as much respect as they probably deserve, but that Arizona game last week, that's tough for them. I mean, I think it just comes down to, right, look at all the teams that are ahead of them in the AP poll, with them being 10. I mean, there's a lot of good teams out there right now throughout college football that are undefeated and have had, renowned wins. I mean, so I think in order to be in the discussion and be up there, they're going to have to continue winning games. And, this week they have a great test in Notre Dame. It's going to be a great game that we're going to get into later, but that's a must-win game for them at this point if they want to continue their college football playoff hopes. And, they got to win these games by, not just 3 points or a touchdown. They got to be, blowing these teams out, I think.
Yeah. I think the fact that teams are moving out of the playoff spot, even after a win, isn't necessarily a sign that it was a bad win. Because, I mean, if you're a college football coach or a player or even a fan, no win is really a bad win. I think what it just shows is that this field is just so competitive. It's more competitive than maybe the last couple of years have been. And, it's going to be tough. Like this first college football playoff ranking that comes out on Halloween is going to be crazy. And I don't think any of us will be able to accurately predict it. But
The product has been great this year, if you ask me. And just another note, I mean, right now you have all these teams that are in the mix, right? And USC might be down low, but in the next coming weeks, it's going to kind of work itself out because you're going to have a lot of these teams playing each other. I mean, Michigan and Ohio State are going to be playing each other. Penn State, throw them in there in the Big Ten. Washington, Oregon, USC, they're all going to have to face each other in the Pac-12. Georgia's going to still have a tough schedule in the SEC. So, in Florida State, there's a lot of teams in the ACC that are sneaky that could beat them. So, I mean, there's a lot to still be worked out. And just because USC is low on the totem pole now doesn't mean that that's where they're going to stay. So I don't think it is necessarily a bad thing or hurting them right now.
Absolutely.
This was a tough week to do, to be honest with you, especially someone who in the polls, I struggled, and I was one that moved USC down a bit. I think I had them at 4 last week, and then I did move them down to 7, but gave Washington just a slight edge. At the same time, I mean, Washington's strength of schedule is not great. The best team that they've played so far, and obviously they've beaten everyone, but what? Boise State, technically, that first game, they kind of killed them. Boise State looks pretty good in their conference, obviously, but they really haven't been tested. And some could say the same about USC, with the exception of, I guess, Colorado's their highest quality opponent thus far. But it's gonna, as Cole said, we're gonna learn a lot more, and especially that Washington, USC, Oregon trio atop the Pac-12. I can't wait to just get more clarity there, just to be like, who the heck is our real college football playoff contender?
Yeah, and we're going to get some clarity this week as Oregon takes on Washington, which I think some of us might have on our cards. So let's get into those cards. Gil, you want to go first? Starting off with your FBS and FCS lock of the weeks, and then your regular picks while holding off on your game of the week.
Okay, yes. I am sorry. I'm just pulling it up here. Weird. I liked a lot, way too much this week, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a little terrifying. So I I think I might. I'm pulling a couple things right now because I always have the biggest card, or I usually do. And I am not trying to do that every single week here. So first off, I'll start with my lock. I'm a little tentative on this, but I feel like the ACC has been a great source of kind of making money this year, and it'll continue to do so. And that is by taking Duke -3 against NC State. That I just think that's a great game. The line doesn't make sense, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's why I've got that one there. Next, I do have Colorado -11. Another one where I just feel like Colorado knows that they kind of have to put up or shut up if they want to stay in the conversation. And it's a good opportunity for them to kind of reemerge, right, and kind of be back in the positive light for media purposes and all that. I do have, actually, you know what? I didn't add this to my card because the game already started. I apologize. I did have WVU -3, but that won't count. Kansas State money line, Louisville -7.5. I do have Washington State -8, UNC -3.5 against Miami. I have 3 plays in that game. UNC Miami, I do have the over 57.5, and I am kind of doubling down on that with the UNC team total over 30.5. And my last 2 are Michigan team total over 38.5, a little high, but I like it. And then Kansas -3.
Nice. I like that card. Couple things that stood out to me. UNC and Miami. Is there anything? Do you feel like that the way that Miami lost that game last week against Georgia Tech kind of influenced your pick here? And was that more of just a coaching fluke, or was that kind of indicative of, a major problem within Miami's either, just play style, anything overall?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I honestly, I really didn't believe in Miami before. I think losing that way probably either can make or break a team, right? Where that's a real tough. How they respond this week is going to define how the rest of their season is, which sounds very cliche, but at the same time, after a devastating loss that should not have been a loss, as literally as a preventable loss as they come, I think that you're going to learn a lot about that Miami team. I just think that North Carolina is too darn good. That offense is just loaded. Drake May's got, I think the Heisman is pretty wide open. So I just like them to put up a lot of points. And I just have no faith in Miami right now. They really did. Obviously, they beat Texas A&M beginning of the season. That's their highest quality win by a lot. I don't know how good Texas A&M is, though. I think at the time I saw it as a really big, high quality win. Now it's one of those, just like Cincinnati over Pitt kind of early on. It's like, oh man, big win. Now it's like, ooh, well, that win might not have meant as much. So that's kind of my logic there. I think that North Carolina is still on the up and up. Their schedule hasn't been much tougher, to be honest. South Carolina, Minnesota, Pitt, Syracuse, with an Appalachian State in the middle there. So yeah, that's where I've got North Carolina, and I'm just riding them out.
So do you think even a close loss for Miami would be enough for you to be like, okay, they've got it together? Like if they lose by maybe a field goal or even like 5 points, and they just look like a put together football team, or would you maybe say, oh, maybe they've righted the ship a little bit?
I would. I really would. So yeah, you're right. That's kind of the bar of like what I'm expecting. But at the same time, there is a real possibility they get blown out, and that was a breaking point for their season, and he lost the locker room immediately in terms of the coach there. So yeah. I think that's good though. Yeah, if they can keep it within a score, I think that they're in pretty good shape, and I won't chalk it up as fade Miami train for the rest of the year.
That Texas A&M point that you made too, and I'm sure Cole's gonna love this because I feel like Texas A&M's kind of been a little bit of a punching bag on this podcast. I mean, I know, Cole, you actively root against them, but I don't know. They just come up in conversations always on the wrong end. But what you mentioned, Gilly, specifically was Texas A&M was that team, right? Where Miami takes them down. It's like, oh wow, they beat Texas A&M. That's really good. And then as the season progresses, you're like, okay, maybe we were kind of gassing them up a little too much. Maybe we were a little bit too impressed by beating that Texas A&M team, right? I think what that comes down to is kind of like a fault in just like the system of like preseason college football rankings, right? Because I mean, it's like we start teams off as a preseason number one, but although we have a good idea of where teams will end up, it's as arbitrary as anything. But I always feel like there is one team like that throughout the year, right? That gets upset week one, and everyone's really impressed with the team that beat them. But then we start to realize that maybe that win wasn't as impressive. A team that kind of comes to mind like that is like the Sam Howell UNC team from a couple of years back. They lost to, I think it was Virginia Tech in the opening game, and everyone's like, "Oh, Sam Howell's got this Heisman buzz," and then they got embarrassed. I mean, to just call it bluntly. But I always think that's interesting. I just think lining up with how we've kind of picked on A&M this year, it's very fitting that they're the team for us to talk about like that.
They always sucker me in, to be fair. I always get suckered in, and I hate it every year. Every year I'm like, oh man, you know what? Jimbo Fisher, this is it. It's clicking. This is the year that they're like in the conversation. They finish in the top 10, or at least like in the college football playoff picture. And nope, so I should learn better because they burned me earlier this year. That's why I'm out now. I'm out.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the day they shit can him, for lack of a better term. I mean, I don't know why A&M gets all this hype. I mean, yeah, they were good when Johnny Manziel was there. They had some big wins, but I mean, what have they done other than that? I mean, yeah, they had Tannehill back in the day. Like, they've always been a decent team, but I just feel like they get so overhyped every year, and they've never really done anything to show that they've deserved that hype, in my opinion. But I would like to hear you guys, your takes on that. I mean,
Bobby Petrino is what suckered me in the beginning of the season of like, oh man, he's back. Oh shit, as just an OC, like this is gonna be fun. That's what got me in because I had been burned before, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm quitting Texas A&M, and then they reeled me back in.
That's respectable. I mean, Petrino's a great coach, but they still suck.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to, because like year in, year out, no matter what the preseason expectations are for Texas A&M, I mean, I think any historic program like that has such a well-defined football culture, it's like hard to, cast doubt on them in the preseason, right? Like it's like Texas football. It's like I mean like Texas Longhorns football, right? Like it's like everyone is so ready to rally behind them in the moment they do good, that it's hard not to kind of catch like the aftershocks of that. So I think that's what it is too. Like, I mean, you can say that for a lot of schools around the country. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is that Johnny Manziel hype still. Cole, let's get into your card. I know Gil, you said that you've always got like one of the big cards, but I feel like you two are kind of going toe to toe for like the most total picks throughout the season.
Yeah, it's funny. Normally, like in years past, I haven't been doing that, but this year I'm just saying screw it and just going for quantity over quality, I guess, which probably isn't the right move. But hey, I'm above 500. Let's try and get up the board and make some ground, cover some ground on those that are above me. So I'll start. First game, I had West Virginia -3 over Houston. They're playing now. I believe West Virginia's losing by 4. So hopefully they can get going in the fourth quarter and cover that, or at least push. Like Gilly, I'm taking Colorado -11.5 over Stanford. Colorado had that nail biter last week against Arizona State. You don't really know what you're going to get with the Buffaloes this year. I mean, I think they're doing better than what people initially thought, coming into the year. But then once they beat TCU in week 1, there were all these expectations and hype around them, and they kind of have sizzled out. But I mean, they are 4-2. They lost to Oregon and USC, and those are 2 great teams, right? So, I think in Stanford this week, that's a game that they should win. Travis Hunter might be returning this week. I don't know if it's confirmed yet, but they said he's a possibility of coming back. So I'll take the Buffaloes in that game at home. I got Rutgers -4.5 over Michigan State. Rutgers has been impressive this year. 4-2, another team that's lost only to teams that realistically should have beat them in Michigan and Wisconsin. So I'm not holding that against them. I look for them to bounce back at home this week against Michigan State, who's been struggling this year and has obviously had a lot of, distractions around that program. So I like Rutgers -4.5. I took Oregon and Washington, the over in that game. 2 electric offenses that have been balling out all year. Both their quarterbacks in Bo Nix and Michael Penix are in the running for that Heisman race that is, highly contested right now. These 2 teams are 1-2 in the country in total offense, with Washington being 1, Oregon being 2. They're both averaging over 550 yards a game, which is just crazy. In their first 5 games, they're just under 3,000 total yards on offense. So, I mean, everything's pointing to a high-scoring shootout, so I'm going to take the over in that game. I have Kansas -3 over OK State. I've really been impressed by what Kansas is doing this year. I know they struggled against Texas earlier in the year, but they bounced back after that game and put up 51 against UCF, which is always a respectable team that does well. So I was impressed by that. I love what Lance Leipold, their head coach, is doing there in Lawrence. I mean, he took a terrible program that used to be the laughingstock of college football, and he's really turned them around. I mean, last year he brought them to a bowl game for the first time since 2009 or 07 rather, and they hadn't had 3 wins in the season since 2009. So, he got them to a bowl game last year. They're already 5-1 this year. They were 2-10 his first season. They went to 6-7 last year. They're 5-1 and in the top 25. So love what they're doing. I'm going to take them this week against OK State, who's been disappointing. So rock chalk there. I got Maryland -14 over Illinois, another team I've been impressed with that's been fun to watch. They're 4-0 at home this year. They did lose to Ohio State, but I look at them to bounce back at home against Illinois. Louisville -7.5 over Pitt. I mean, clearly they're legit. Jeff Brom, he left Purdue and he got a lot of heat for leaving Purdue to go to Louisville. A lot of people were questioning that move, wondering whether, is that a lateral move or even a decline? But I mean, what he's done there has been really impressive. They've shown that they are legit. I mean, they beat Notre Dame pretty, easily last week. So I like them over Pitt by a touchdown or just over this week.
Yeah.
You want me to keep going?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, and just to touch upon that too with Jeff Brom, I mean, people are questioning his move. I think he's setting himself up for an even bigger job down the line. I don't think he's going to stay at Louisville, but he could be in the discussion for, one of those powerhouse programs. So I like what they're doing there. I got Kentucky 2.5 over Mizzou. Two great teams this year that have been impressive in the SEC, both 5-1. They're both coming off losses. Missouri lost to LSU. Kentucky got manhandled by Georgia, but I mean, it is Georgia. I think the big thing this week for Kentucky, they only put up 13 points last week. That's not going to get it done. They need more offensive production in order to beat Mizzou, but I think they'll do it. So I'm going to take the Wildcats in that game. My FBS lock of the week is Duke -3 over NC State. Really like Riley Leonard, their quarterback, what he's doing. They didn't play last week, but I look for them to bounce back this week. I mean, they had that heartbreaking loss against Notre Dame a couple weeks ago where they could have won that game if it wasn't for, Sam Hartman pulling that 4th and 16 run out of nowhere. So, I like Duke, and I think they're one of those teams that could upset a lot of those other ACC teams that are in the running. So I'll take them this week over NC State. My FCS lock of the week is going to be Bryant Moneyline. I'm representing my Bulldogs against Robert Morris. I think they've been impressive this year. They've had some tough losses, but I like them to beat Robert Morris, and then I'll hold off on my game of the week.
That is a fantastic card, as always. I mean, it's a reason why you're 29-22 overall this season. A couple things I really liked out of it. Obviously, you have Kentucky and Louisville. You're taking both those teams against the spread. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, Jake and I were talking about how, due to the, kind of the resurgence of both UNC and Duke football at the same time, that rivalry game, which is usually one of the top in college basketball, has a chance of being a great game in college football this year. And I think the same can be said about Louisville, Kentucky. I think that's going to be both of their respective regular season finales. So when these two teams kind of come together, I mean, if we can look a little bit forward in the future here, what do you expect out of a game like that? I mean, do you expect a lot of offense? Do you expect, one team to outcoach the other? I mean, how do you feel like a game like that is going to go down?
I mean, I think it's going to be a great game, right? I mean, they've both showed out this year, and then you just add into the interstate rivalry. I mean, it's a lot of emotions. Emotions will be high, and both fan bases are going to turn out, and it's going to be a fun game to watch. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And Rutgers, you have Rutgers against the spread over Michigan State. A good pick by all means. I don't know how much you guys are on TikTok, but I do feel like Rutgers has kind of become the meme team of late, which I find very fun. They're still not New York's college football team, despite what many want to say, including the Big Ten commercial. But I'm fine rooting for them as this year's meme team.
They're 5-0-1 against the spread this year too, so I do love that pick. I'll probably use that, tail that on my personal end. I won't add it to my card, and I do apologize, Cole. I didn't realize you got your lock in already. I didn't mean to copy you with the Duke -3, but I love that one. That jumped off right the page too. So
yeah, I like it.
We both won that.
Hey, I'm all for it, Gilly. Let's get it.
I'll go into my card. I don't tend to find myself a guy that perpetually roots for favorites, but this bowl eligibility graphic that I made, just got me so hyped for bowl season that I think I want to root for a lot of teams. You're gonna notice a lot of teams I'm going for are on the verge of their 6th win. But let me start off with my locks of the week. I'm gonna go FSU -17 over Cuse for my FBS lock of the week. I think, I feel like they might be kind of, Florida State might kind of be stumbling their way out of the college football playoff conversation. I think they've showed some cracks just in their overall play that I don't think, especially with teams like Louisville and UNC coming up, through the ACC, I really don't see them, having an easy time to the college football playoff if they make it, but I think they're going to win pretty handily over Syracuse this weekend. For my FCS lock of the week, I'm going to go Georgetown over Lehigh in some Patriot League action. Kind of based on like a little bit of a transitive property here in relation to Fordham football. Georgetown is 1-0 in Patriot League play. They beat Fordham in a pretty decisive upset. And then Lehigh lost to Fordham on two like back-to-back field goals, which at the time, for Fordham's kicker, they were two of the longest field goals that he's ever kicked in his career. So I'm just going to go Georgetown over Lehigh in what should be a close one. In terms of my regular picks, I got another team that is looking to go 6-0. This time in the Sun Belt Conference, I'm going to go James Madison -6 over Georgia Southern. Over in the Pac-12, they can't be bowl eligible yet. This will be their 5th win if they beat Cal, but I'm going to go Utah -11.5. In Oregon, Washington, it's going to be super, super close. I might have to go Oregon +3. I think these banner ads all over the internet are really getting to me. I'm feeling a little bodacious, so I'm going to have to go with the Ducks here. Tennessee -3 over Texas A&M, just kicking the Aggies while they're down. And then let me go Florida +2 over South Carolina. I really like that pick. I think the Gators. I mean, it should be an easy pick, but it's fun to root for an away dog here. And finally, let's get into our game of the week, which is one of the most historic rivalries in college football.
I want to interrupt you just for 1 second. That Utah pick, I really like that against Cal. Like you said, they're going for their 5th win, not their 6th. But they haven't. I don't think they played last week, but the week prior they lost to Oregon State. And Oregon State's been unbelievable this year. Another team that's really been impressive, but in their last 3 games, they've only put up 7 points in each game. That worries me a little bit, but I agree with you. I think they're going to beat Cal by a good amount, but I think they got to get back on track offensively this game and start putting up some more points. But I like that pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that loss to Oregon State shows that if the Pac-12, I really do think that we will get a Pac-12 representative in the college football playoff this year. But, however this game against, this game between Oregon and Washington goes, and then UCLA is kind of a sneaky team in the Pac-12 this year. This could be a conference that kind of eats itself alive. You know what I mean? Like every team it could, create one of those things that people like to call like the circle of suck, where everyone's kind of beating each other. But who knows? I mean, I think this is going to be, while I think Utah is a clear favorite in this one, I still think it's going to be a very important matchup. So now let's get into our game of the week. This is, as classic as you can get for a college football rivalry. It's, I love these rivalries that are so heated, even though the teams that are playing in this game are so far away from each other geographically. It just goes to show, like, not even that these two teams really, like, that there's so much hate between these two teams, but that there's just so much value in this matchup and in their trophy, the Jeweled Shillelagh. That is obviously between Notre Dame and USC, the 94th meeting between these two teams. It's a very close series. Notre Dame leads it all time 48-37 and with 5 ties. So, USC still got some ground to keep up, but they've done pretty well, since I would say 2000. And obviously, considering where both these teams are in the top 25 in the college football playoff conversation, this could be one of the most important meetings between these two teams that we've seen so far. There's a lot of narrative behind this, in terms of, with Notre Dame trying to prove themselves with this young coaching staff, USC trying to, make a push for the playoff in the dying years of the Pac-12. So it all comes down to what color jewel is going to be put on the shillelagh this year. Obviously, every time Notre Dame wins, there's an emerald, and every time USC wins, there is a ruby. So, guys, starting off with you, Cole, you're the big Notre Dame fan here. How do you think this game's going to go down?
Got my Notre Dame hat on, baby. I can't go against them. I know USC is a great team, but I got to roll with the Fighting Irish. Like we said throughout this show, I think it's a must-win game for both programs, right? For different reasons. Like you said, Basil, USC is trying to stay alive and move up and try to sneak into the college football playoff. And then on the flip side, Notre Dame, they already have 2 losses. One they probably shouldn't have had in Louisville. So if they lose this game, they go to 4-3, I believe. And, then it's just the natural discussion that happens every year. Notre Dame, they come in and they have all these expectations. And once again, they've just blown it and they end up mediocre. And coming into this year, I said multiple times on the show, I thought this was going to be different for Notre Dame. I thought they were going to, push it to the top and hopefully sneak into the college football playoff. That's not a reality at this point with 2 losses, but they can still be in a huge bowl game if they win out. But this game's huge for them. It's in South Bend, so I like their chances. Their defense has shown that they can be great. They have a great defense, but they've also, let up a lot of points in some games. So it's really a question of what is their defense going to do. I think their offense will be all right with USC's defense. I think Sam Hartman's going to play great. It really is a question of what does Notre Dame do on the defensive side of the ball. I do think being at home and, with the rivalry game and with all the emotions this team's had over the last month or so, I do think that they'll put a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams and try to get him flustered. And I think if they can do that, they can win this game. But, like I said, the last month has been a roller coaster for them. They lost that heartbreaker to Ohio State on the last play of the game that they probably should have won, and only had 10 guys on the field. They come back the week after. They have that crazy game against Duke where they drive down the field on the fourth and long. They end up winning that game and getting away with that one. And then last week they lose to Louisville, and they suffered that upset. So they kind of have been up and down all over the place. And, all these games have really taken a toll on them probably emotionally. But I think this week will show, what are we made of in South Bend? What kind of team are we, and where do we go from here? I think this really is going to decide their season. And I think it's huge for them. So I like them to win, but I am nervous about it.
Yeah, you mentioned that Louisville loss, and kind of that always creeping mindset, right? That Notre Dame is showing their true colors. Halfway through the season, they're a bit more mediocre than we were hyping them up to be. In the same way, maybe in a slightly different way than Miami, right? Like Miami kind of. It's in a less comical way than Miami, I should say, because it's not really, the way that Notre Dame lost to Louisville and the way they lost to Ohio State. It wasn't like oopsies, like LOL Notre Dame. It was more, oh wow, that was disappointing, or they just got outplayed at the last second there. It really shows. I think it's the beautiful thing about college football, and it's kind of the ugly side of college football, and how quickly a season can kind of derail. But also in a game like this coming up against USC, it could also be an example of how quickly a season can turn back upwards. So, for you, is this the final, not the final, but is this kind of the turning point of the season for Notre Dame? Could it be the turning point for Notre Dame, depending on where they want to finish this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything for them, to be honest with you. I mean, just looking at their schedule after USC, I mean, they still have Clemson on their schedule, which, you know, anything could happen there. I mean, they do have Pitt, Wake Forest, and Stanford. Those should be 3 wins, but you know, you lose to USC, and then if you have to go into Death Valley and play Clemson, a 4-loss team, Notre Dame, coming into this year. I mean, people were expecting them to, you know, potentially go undefeated or have 1 loss to Ohio State or whatever. But if you have 4 losses, I mean, I just think it's disappointing for what their expectations were. So, I mean, I think this game is huge. And on the flip side, if you beat USC, then you go to Pitt, you get on a roll, you could potentially beat Clemson and then win out, and you only have those 2 losses to Ohio State and to Louisville. I don't think the Ohio State game is held against them because I don't think they were supposed to win that game. But, I mean, maybe the way that they lost, being unprepared and all that hurts them. I don't know how the, you know, college bowl committees look at that or, you know, how that gets factored in. But, you know, they could go – they're at a crossroads right now, and it could go either way. And I think this game is ultimately going to dictate what road they go down.
Absolutely. And so you want to lock in a final pick for us? Either you know, spread, money line, both?
Yeah, I got Notre Dame money line over USC. I didn't want to take the spread because they are actually favored in this game, which I was surprised about, but they are at home. But, you know, I could see it coming down to last drive again, field goal at the end or something crazy happening. So I don't like the spread, but I'll take the money line.
Gilly, are you? It's right now. So for reference, it is a 3-point spread in favor of Notre Dame. Gilly, do you feel comfortable taking that spread in any direction, or you think you're just going to want to settle on one team to just win it, and why?
So I actually, I'm changing it. I had 2 plays on this. I am going down to 1. I want to be honest, I lean to taking USC +3. I just think decent value there, and I do think. Again, I know, sorry, Cole, but I just think that USC, this is a big moment for them as well. And you're right about Notre Dame. It's just interesting, even in the Heisman conversation. This could be the revival of Sam Hartman's Heisman campaign. If you were to pull all that off and top Caleb Williams, outscore him in some kind of shootout, that'd be awesome. And that'd be the type of moment to really usurp him back into the top 4, if you will, and kind of just be in that conversation. So I like the narrative on both sides. I'm terrified of determining what narrative I like most there. So I'm going to go with the over of 60. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think this USC defense has shown it's going to let people score. Even a team like what was it, Arizona last week, that they let them score 41. That's a little bit of a red flag. So I love the over. I feel like 60 is a little lower than what I expect. However, at the same time, I feel like these big games, sometimes they do have so much hype. There's so much history that it's just slow, weird, sluggish start because players on both sides are nervous. But I think eventually they'll get going and eclipse that number of 60. So yeah. Lean USC. I might take the money line as a little side thing, but yeah, my play here.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Gilly, about like the Heisman implications, right? Because this just reminded me last year. I was actually at the USC Notre Dame game out in Los Angeles, and it was a night game at the Coliseum, and that was the game that Caleb Williams went off, and it was awesome to see him in person. And I remember being in the stadium after that game saying, he just won the Heisman Trophy with this game. And that was really like the game that pushed him over the edge and got him the Heisman Trophy. So, I think it has huge implications when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. So you saw it last year, and I think you could see it again this year.
I hate to say it too, and this is I do respect Notre Dame. I've picked them a few times this year. However, we talked about Texas A&M being the type of team that a win looking back might not be as strong as we thought it was. If Notre Dame loses, and again, I wouldn't even blame them that much for this loss. But like you said, if they lose to Clemson, then all of a sudden they're in trouble. That win against Ohio State, that could have implications too for Ohio State to say, all right, you know what? Maybe that win against Notre Dame wasn't that big of a deal. And even if they beat Penn State, maybe they're still behind Michigan. And it's kind of – so I'm just kind of trying to think about that. And again, it's all hypothetical. If Notre Dame wins this game, then all of a sudden maybe we're saying that about USC. How good is USC really? Who have they played so far? So, yeah.
No, I agree completely. I mean, if Notre Dame gets blown out by USC, I think that hurts Ohio State for sure, whether they beat Michigan or not down the road. But I think, that definitely comes into play.
Yeah, this might be the toughest game of the week I've had to pick so far. I think to stay on the safe side, I'm going to go USC +3, but that does not really make me confident in saying that they're going to get the win, right? I mean, I think there's a lot. Look, a 3-point margin. Taking somebody at +3 is as close as you can get to taking an underdog on the money line without taking them on the money line, but I do kind of want to leave a little bit of room for Notre Dame there because, I mean, I think anyone who listens to this podcast or you guys who do this podcast with me, like, I'm all about narrative nation. And I just feel like, this tale you spun, Cole, it's just too much on me right now. You know what I mean? I agree that this could be kind of a pseudo Heisman championship game, right? I mean, I think everyone loves that, like, more than just kind of waiting for the inevitable favorite to claim that trophy every January. So I think it's going to be close. I'm having a tough time taking the over here because I do feel like Notre Dame has been such a good defensive team, and I think USC is one of those teams where, if you can get Caleb Williams rattled, you can kind of bring him down to earth a little bit. So I think I'm going to go USC and the under here as my pick. I'm very excited for this game. I'm very torn on it because I think both teams are very interesting and would be great, kind of New Year's Six editions. So I think I'm going to stay on the safe side and take USC +3 and the under. That is a great set. That is a great couple cards that you guys pulled out this week. Great locks. Before we finish up, there are a couple other games that I just feel like are, that could be fun for people to check out. Auburn LSU trying to go for their 5th win and kind of stay alive in the SEC divisional race. Washington State, Arizona, Washington again, kind of trying to defy expectations here, and just a lot of teams that are, on this most recent bowl eligibility graphic, we have 6 teams. Next week, if things go kind of in the way of a lot of favorites, we could more than double this graphic next week, which I think will be very fun. So for you guys, are there any other games kind of under the radar that you kind of want to check out?
Yeah, for me, it's UNC, the Tar Heels, and Miami. Miami, like we talked about, tough loss last week, but, they've been good this year. And UNC's undefeated. They're one of the top 3 teams in the ACC right now with Louisville and Florida State. Does Drake May keep it going? And do they slide into the discussion for the ACC championship? Or does Miami take them down, and then that leaves Louisville and Miami at the top? That'll be a fun game to watch.
I think one too that a lot of people might not be talking about, because I just feel like, especially I'm sure a lot of people watch this show or read House Enterprise, which you should be reading, house-enterprise/the blog. A lot of great stuff coming out almost every day there. A lot of people who do read it are based in the East Coast. So not a lot of people are watching a lot of Mountain West football. But if you look at our Football House Top 25, you'll see that Air Force has made their way into the rankings, and they are playing, and along with Fresno State as well. I want to shout them out as well, because both of those teams could be Fresno State and Air Force could be bowl eligible against Utah State and Wyoming, respectively. And that Air Force Wyoming game, if you want to watch just a great game that should have some serious conference championship implications, you got to watch that game, because I think it's going to be excellent. Wyoming obviously really kind of challenged Texas earlier this year, so it'll be very interesting to see how they continue to do well against a team that's a bit more at their level. But
you got UCLA and Oregon State on the Pac-12 too. Another good game.
Yeah. Again, that conference that could just end up eating itself alive. And then Utah's right there with them, right at 15. So I think that's. Oh, you got to go.
I do have one game. Again, it's a little obscure. I know it's kind of similar to what you prefaced your other suggestion of a game that's interesting to watch is also maybe not intriguing to a Northeastern person, but the memeable Big Ten West has a huge matchup between Iowa and Wisconsin. I'm excited about that game. I'm tempted to pick Iowa because they're dogs by 10 points, but that's got huge implications for the Big Ten West, which I know won't mean much in terms of college football playoff implications. But at the same time, that is whoever comes out of Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State is going to play. So they could play a spoiler role, even if it's just for seeding purposes between Michigan being a 1 or a 2 or maybe just in at the 4. So for that reason, I'm kind of locked in with the Big Ten West this weekend.
Yeah, a lot of great games this week. I mean, this has probably been the best week we've had so far, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, that a win for Iowa would make them bowl eligible, so that's very important. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this week of the Football House. A lot of great picks. Hopefully, they go our way. I think they will because I think we're all really getting the hang of it this season. I know that's coming from the guy that's currently in last place, but I'm feeling really good, guys. So keep checking us out on the Football House every Wednesday or Thursday on House Enterprise on Twitter or House Enterprise on YouTube. And you can check this out even when we're not live on YouTube every week because I know you just want to keep listening to our voices and watch back as much as you can. And then keep checking out house-enterprise.com for just great college football coverage, great NFL coverage. College basketball is right around the corner, so we got a lot of stuff coming for you guys. But until then, we'll see you next time.